The harsh, fluorescent lights of Chicago Mercy Hospital's ICU cut through the stillness like surgical knives, casting sharp shadows on the pristine white walls. Jake Reynolds stood outside the glass observation window, every muscle in his body coiled with unease, the leash in his hand the only thing anchoring him to reality. Inside, Olivia Carter lay motionless, her frail body woven into a labyrinth of IV lines and machines. The rhythmic beeping of her heart monitor was the sole sign that life still pulsed within her. But would she ever open her eyes again? Shadow pressed his cold muzzle against the glass, fogging a small patch in the chill, ears rigid, muscles trembling with barely restrained intensity. When Dr. Victor Langley entered, Shadow's hackles rose and a low, ominous growl rolled up his throat. Jake frowned. Shadow had sniffed out bombs, tracked down fugitives, and stormed through gunfire without a second thought, but never had a doctor's presence sent him into meltdown. "Easy, buddy," Jake murmured, tugging gently at the leash. Shadow didn't flinch, his amber eyes locked onto Langley, as though reading a threat hidden in the man's white coat. Inside, Langley paused beside Olivia's bedside, adjusting her IV bag with unnerving composure. Dr. Emily Foster, overseeing the ICU night shift, watched him closely. Something about his movements set her teeth on edge. A sudden shriek from Olivia's monitor shattered the silence as her vital signs plummeted. Langley moved with practiced calm, tweaking her medications. His face remained an unreadable mask. Shadow reacted in an instant. He lunged, muscles straining, a feral snarl ripping from his throat. Jake braced himself against the leash's pull. "What's happening?" Emily cried, eyes flicking between the alarm and the agitated dog. Jake shook his head. Langley's gaze flicked toward them, lasting the barest heartbeat. But it was enough. In that flash, Jake saw not a healer's glance, but a predator caught in the act. What was he hiding? Just hours earlier at O'Hare International Airport, Olivia had weaved through the sea of travelers under the overhead loudspeaker's constant drone. Shadow padded by her side, nose twitching as he sifted through the mingled scents of jet fuel, perfume, and endless steel. Most days, his world was contraband in baggage, or the chemical sting of explosives. Today, something else cut through the air, a sharp, metallic tang that made his whiskers bristle. Olivia halted at Shadow's tug. "What is it, buddy?" she whispered, pressing a gloved hand to the leash. Shadow inhaled, ears forward, alert. This wasn't narcotics or bombs. It was colder, more insidious. She clicked her radio. "Dispatch, Carter at Terminal D. Possible alert. Need backup." Jake Reynolds, stationed at baggage screening, heard her crackle and was on his feet in seconds. "Copy that, Carter. On my way." Shadow guided them to a shipping container marked medical supplies from Germany. The metal was icy beneath Olivia's palm, so cold she shivered. She pried the lid just enough for a thin wisp of vapor to escape, a cryogenic mist that smelled faintly of chemicals. Before she could warn Jake, a deafening gunshot rang out. Pain exploded in her shoulder, vision bleeding red. Shadow erupted into action, barking furiously. From behind stacked crates, attackers unleashed a hail of bullets. Steel shards whistled by, sparks dancing on metal. The stench of gunpowder and burning rubber filled the air. Jake and his team dove in, returning fire as the cargo terminal became a war zone. Olivia fought anguish and adrenaline to drag herself behind the container. That's when she saw it, a strange symbol etched into the metal, one she glimpsed in a case file long buried, and her superior had warned her to forget. Shadow planted himself between her and the chaos, teeth bared. Before she could call for help, darkness swallowed her. What had they unleashed? Back in the ICU's quiet glow, Olivia lay pale and fragile, connected once more to the beeping machinery. Shadow lay sentinel at the foot of her bed, eyes half open but every muscle taut with vigilance. Dr. Foster entered, drawn to the massive dog near the door. He wasn't growling, just watching Dr. Langley with an intensity that churned Emily's guts. She checked Olivia's chart. "Victor," she called softly. "Did you authorize a change in her sedative?" Langley set down his pen, offering a smooth, unreadable smile. She showed slight seizure activity. "I made a minor correction." Emily frowned. No seizures were on record. Shadow's gaze never wavered. Emily's spine prickled. She slipped back, pulled out her phone, and typed one word. "Now." Jake's phone vibrated as he sprinted down the ICU corridor. By the time he reached Olivia's door, Langley was already fleeing, clutching a folder. Jake barked a command. Shadow responded without hesitation, charging after him. Langley barreled past a nurse, elevator doors sliding shut. But Shadow wasn't far behind, launching himself through the narrowing gap. Inside, Langley whirled, pulling an unmarked syringe from his pocket. "Back off!" he snarled, shoving it at Shadow's throat. The dog didn't flinch. A low growl rumbled. Langley lunged to inject. Big mistake. Shadow dodged, then clamped his jaws around the man's arm. The syringe shattered on the floor as Langley screamed. The elevator dinged open, and Jake and security were there in an instant. Langley hit the deck, cuffs snapping. Who had given him the order? In the security office, Dr. Foster laid out a small vial. The same substance from Langley's syringe and Olivia's chart. "This isn't a painkiller," she said. "It's an unknown compound. I've sent it to the lab." She flipped the file to a new prescription entered that morning, unsigned, unauthorized. Jake's eyes sharpened. "What did he do to her?" he demanded. Langley only smirked. "I follow orders." Shadow nosed around the corner, paused, then sat before a locked medical refrigerator. Jake yanked it open and found, taped to the back panel, a sealed pouch of unmarked vials. The same symbol from the cargo container stared back. A cold dread washed over them. This went far beyond drugs. It was bioweapons, and they were still in play. 2 nights later, the ICU lights flickered and went dark. The automatic locks clicked open themselves. Shadow leapt up, nostrils flaring. Jake drew his gun as a voice drifted through the gloom. "Put down the gun, Reynolds." Captain Richard Hale stepped into view, Jake and Olivia's commanding officer, flanked by 2 armed men. But this wasn't a rescue. It was betrayal. Hale's calm voice rattled Jake more than the gun in his hand. "The bioweapons were just a front," he said. "You've stumbled into something far bigger." Gunfire erupted as Hale's men opened fire. Jake dove aside while Shadow charged, tackling one mercenary. Olivia, shaken but determined, rolled off her bed, grabbed a fallen pistol, and shot another attacker. The last gunman tried to flee, but Shadow snapped at his ankle, dragging him down. Sirens wailed as SWAT and FBI battered down the doors. The ICU became a tableau of chaos and triumph, Hale cuffed and breathing threats. But the real battle had only begun. 2 weeks later, a federal grand jury hearing buzzed with hushed excitement. Olivia sat poised, answering the prosecutor's questions with quiet strength. Jake stood beside Shadow, leash slack but ready. Their dog watched every face in the room, a living testament to what they'd uncovered. Nationwide arrests have followed their revelations, but the mastermind remained at large. Olivia paused, meeting Jake's steady gaze. "They won't stop," she murmured. "They have resources we can only dream of." Jake placed a hand on Shadow's head, his own voice calm but firm. "Maybe, but we exposed them. That counts." Shadow's and their eyes shone with silent agreement. They had turned the tide, but the war was far from over. That night on the hospital roof, rain-scented breezes rustled the railing as Olivia and Jake stood side by side. The city lights flickered below like watchful embers. Shadow lay alert at their feet, ears pricked and nose raised to the distant runway. A plane's roar cut through the darkness, but something in Shadow's posture told them it wasn't the engines he smelled. Olivia traced her fingers through his fur. "Another case already calling?" she asked softly. Jake let out a breath, exhaustion and resolve mingling in his eyes. "Never any breaks," he replied. The dog's tail gave a hopeful wag, eager and expectant. "But we have each other," Jake said, bracing against the night air. Shadow lifted his head, a low, eager growl escaping his throat, ready for whatever came next. And so were they.